DLC for Grounded 2 already? Hey Ratbags, it's Jade today, going over an interview where actually the focus is on how great Grounded 2 has been, propping up Obsidian because basically Avowed and Outer Worlds kind of flopped slightly. But also giving my opinion about the latest update and letting you guys know about what's being fixed, what's been worked on or not. Just adding a bit of balance. I think there's some fair criticisms of the update that we've just had, but also think there's some really great stuff too. As always, let's go. I've been a bit concerned that since they moved the original dev team and gone on to make something else, and we've got other company involved like Eidos with their problems and issues they've had in the last couple of years, letting go members of staff and cancelling projects. It's not exactly the best, most stable studio to be in charge long term maybe of Grounded 2, but it does look like they keep to their word about it being a franchise and that we should, based on purely the success that Grounded has brought Obsidian, more and more of Grounded in the future. So yeah, there's a new interview with Ergus Verhart and Josh Sawyer. They're the big wigs that run Obsidian. And we are going to talk a little bit about some of the other games like Avowed and Outer Worlds, which I did cover on my other channel. Basically, just before Christmas, it turns out Microsoft were not happy with the performance of their revenue streams coming from a lot of their game studios. They've already let go thousands of staff over the last couple of years, and a lot were hit by Xbox. Some closures like we saw with Everwild, and a lot more studios have been closed. So Obsidian have been held up as this poster boy of just banging out games, having 3 released in the same year last year, Avowed, Outer Worlds 2 and Grounded 2. But turns out Avowed and Outer Worlds didn't perform how they were meant to. I don't think anyone's too surprised at that. You only need to take one glance at the Steam concurrent players at their peaks and realise that they were far and way below anything like close to what Grounded achieved. It's kind of crazy that literally a sequel to one game, the original Outer Worlds sold 5 million copies, and a brand new fantasy property by one of the masters of RPGs, Avowed set in the Pillars of Eternity universe, struggled to meet expectations. I mean, hats off to Obsidian. I thought Avowed was pretty decent. It got way overhated by people at the time, concentrating on outside politics and trying to compare it to Skyrim and other games when it really wasn't. Although admittedly, with a big update coming in February, actually this month, and launching on PlayStation 5, it's finally adding photo mode. Like taking a year to add photo mode is kind of crazy. But we'll have New Game Plus and a bunch of other stuff that they've added in recent months. And then we've got Outer Worlds, which was maybe a bit more lackluster. It did try a few things, particularly like the way that you have to kind of own a lot of your mistakes and choices, not being able to really retcon or reload certain things, but it did feel kind of bog standard and nothing new in the space. Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 were both in production for 6 years. That's a lot of money they've spent on making them games. Whereas Grounded was pre-made for about 2 years before it released in early access. If you take into account early access, 4 years. And then if you do want to add in the year of updates they had afterwards, add in things like the Reloaded update, you could easily say 5 years. And that's about average for most AA, AAA games. It's not that far behind the others. Give or take maybe some extra time for Avowed, especially pre-production. Anyway, the point of this to say is that at least 1 million copies sold on Steam, 1 million copies sold at least on Xbox, or 2 million because they reckon they've had 3 million players buy it in the first 3 weeks. Out of everything, Grounded is the money spinner, and so it's the one we're going to be seeing a lot more of. Literally says it right here, they're going to be adding additional content for Outer Worlds 2 and Grounded 2. Not just early access update, otherwise it would say. And that falls in line with Chris Parker originally saying before Grounded 2 came out that they plan to support it for years to come. So of course we're going to get early access out of the way, and early access I think will be finished by the time 2027 rolls around, and it means we'll have content in the future. I'm expecting free updates, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do either more packs like the Founders Pack stuff, which I won't mind once the game's out of early access. But even better, some sort of plans for DLC. It could be in the works. We've seen from some of the concept art the stuff like the hot dog stand that many assume might be the end of the game, but it does look like it will be an explorable space at one point. And there's talk about the toilets that are in the unfinished part of the map as well. There's been no inclination in the files that will actually be explored inside, but that could be something. Whether or not it's going to still be a toilet or a visitor centre, we're not sure. But my favourite DLC speculation is imagine a return to the backyard, but it's evolved and mutated. Bugs are no longer just bugs, they really are monstrous creatures. Omninant have turned the yard back over into lots of sort of different new biomes, trying to find stuff or sweep up and clear up all the experiments. But something went wrong, the whole area had to be cordoned off again. As long as it doesn't affect the actual full story of Grounded, I think I'd be totally down to chuck money at a whole new experience, but somewhat familiar. So yeah, we don't know exactly what type of content, but it does sound like something a bit more chunky and meaningful than just simply a piece of new Founders kit or something along the line with skins. So they've got content for Outworlds 2, but won't be making an Outworlds 3 at the moment. Adam Brennicky, the original creator, and the rest of the team that made Grounded 1 are probably working on something to do with Outer Worlds, since they worked on the original Pillars of Eternity series. And this is really interesting to me because it has been kind of pitched that they'd always maybe make a sequel, but by the sounds of it, that wasn't always going to be guaranteed. Certainly not for something they were going to do straight away. As in this interview, it's Eidos that pitched the idea of making a sequel to Grounded so soon. So how can that make sense? The game that has bailed basically the studio out from Papa Microsoft wielding its axe, potentially making them lose staff and more or cancel projects. Well, Obsidian probably did want just a bit more time to flesh things out properly. And Papa Microsoft was like, hell no, let's get another game, yeah, we agree. That early success of Grounded definitely helped, and that's why they started speaking about it being a franchise a good few years ago. Does seem there have been issues though with a lot of the support teams that go into making these games, from community to maybe localization and other parts of Q&A. 3 games in 1 year was a bit crazy, and yeah, it shows. So looks like they are learning. They are using some of their staff to monitor and help support another studio like Eidos make something that obviously lots of fans want to see. Buggies, rideable ones, had originally been designed to be shared by multiple players until Parker and his crew realised the functionality wasn't coming together, leading them to pivot. I was like, if this was one of our internal teams, we'd work on this for another 2 or 3 months. We made this call because we could tell them what to do. It feels still like we run around with our kid gloves on internally. And as some criticism has been levelled at Grounded, reusing so much of Grounded 1 in the sequel, well, here's the answer. Obsidian are using technology and art from their previous games to make games quicker. It's a while back, but the example here is Fallout 3 New Vegas. Only cost about 8 million, which was a bargain even then, and only took 2 years to make because they didn't have to change everything. They literally used the engine that had made Fallout 3. Do people really care that we spent an extra 100th person months on the inventory screen? And that's something to bear in mind for people that want to criticise the state of Grounded 2 at the moment. What would you prefer? A good another 2 years without any kind of Grounded game, and then it would be here roughly maybe in a decent state? Something like Avowed or Outworlds 2 that ended up kind of being a bit mediocre? Or by using a outsourcing studio, by reusing the same engine and obviously adding more to it, like so many other games do, like COD, EA titles like FIFA, or back in the day at least, and of course Ubisoft, to get games made quicker and to bring us some Grounded 2 content. It's always why I laugh when people start criticising that these updates have been too small or there's huge problems in the game, including that hate bait farming Moni Milton. There are some things that I think do need to be fixed relatively soon. I do think we need a solution for raw science now, like not in 3 months' time. There are too many complaints from commenters that I've seen saying they haven't got enough raw science to buy stuff, or that they just simply want to get ahead and make sure they've got plenty topped up for the next update. Things like respawnable sturdy rocks, or some way to craft them a bit easier, and obviously having that recipe. Beyond crashes, which suck, and people losing items and stuff, I would say they're the 2 biggest things Obsidian probably need to look at right now, immediately. Don't panic, I'm not about to do a Milton and spend the rest of this video ranting. That's just one flip side of viewing things. The other thing you've got to remember is, this update I think is one of the best we've seen in the Grounded franchise. It absolutely beats anything we've seen in terms of a biome and how it's structured in Grounded 1. Verticality to be able to go up all these different plants, different pots, climb up on the fences, and yes, we have to deal with wasps, but there was a huge amount of explorable spaces. It wasn't finished, and you could argue that maybe they should have delayed until they were ready to add things like the Black Ant Hill properly. But again, it's that same question. Do you want updates to take even longer because they just have to take longer because that's the way they're working? Or would you prefer most of an update and a little bit polished a month after? Don't get me wrong, game crashing bugs or issues with progression are really not really that acceptable and should be fixed pretty quickly, and they've mostly done that. Although I would still say they probably should have kept the PTB running for another week and made sure all the issues were solved before the actual update went live for everyone. As it turns out, if progression was blocked for you in the PTB, or you had issues with the boss being able to be summoned quickly, or you couldn't progress because the thing wasn't popping up, supposedly that should be all working for you now. So if you're able to go and take on the masked fighter without doing any of the junction boxes, apparently according to one of the devs in Discord, that you are meant to be able to do that because it's the way around the mission structure being broken. And again, this is the kind of shit that needs to be told outside of Discord in a community post. Some more social posts. Heck, ping me so I don't have to go around looking and stalking devs about what they're saying. They have said they're going to get the known issues board issue tracker up and running a bit better with the most recent issues, so hopefully that'll happen soon. But that leads us on to what's happening with the next update. I would expect a lot of them things to hopefully be fixed. Supposedly some issues to do with the Founders Pack decor pieces not working properly. But slightly worryingly, they also had a reply to someone that said they couldn't start the garden boss fight, and apparently the next update won't fix that explicitly, and that they need actual saves from players. So if you can't actually do the boss fight, send in your save data or tell them in obviously a note on the community forums or the support page, or join Discord and pretty much let it be known in the bug forum part. It's a lot easier to do if you're on PC, but if you want to get these things fixed, that's what they need. Anyway, back to the gardens. I love the actual verticality of it. I loved each biome's got its own unique feel. It feels like you should be exploring everywhere, and now they've got the raw science actually spawning properly, it definitely wants to reward you for doing that. It's maybe a bit too easy to bypass stuff just by running along the wall, and I think they should probably do some sort of blocker to stop that, or extend the hedges to go over the wall, because it does feel like you can just bypass all dangers. And they probably need to work on some of the shortcuts with the tube transit systems, because they're kind of garbage. But I love the new bugs. Some of them are just absolutely a delight to fight. Like earwigs, yes, I'm not joking. I actually think they're really good. There might still be a bug where people aren't able to block their first 3 attacks. But when it is working and you pull off a 5 perfect block combo, you feel like epicness. There's also a bit of a bug with the smoothies that I mentioned previously in another video. If you're using any of the pumpkin smoothies, don't bother just yet because they're not actually giving you better buffs, only pumpkin pie. Seems some data has been put round the wrong way. And the Valentine's update at the moment is simply OP. To stock up on as many of the big chunky smoothies as you want, because the smoochy chocolate's absolutely everywhere. I think the snake is amazing. Yes, it's a bit gimmicky, and maybe after a while you get bored of just seeing it running around. But it's basically a stop and go, you must get the scales whenever you see it, because you need so many of them if you want to build the roof parts or maybe get some of the armour. I like the puzzle scenarios they did with the actual story content, and you actually have to do something a bit more functional than just pressing one little button somewhere, effectively like it was in the Haze. Them beats are amazing. I think we need to see more of that kind of stuff, even more complicated or more puzzle-like. As long as we can have more use out of certain places, like the Candy Factory feels like it should have more stuff in it. Imagine we have to go back there in the future, and it's the only place that you can combine elements. This is something I've spoken about before in Grounded 1. And I think actually for the future of Grounded 2, before it came out, how cool would it be if you had less damage from fresh and maybe spicy, but you were able to imbue a weapon with both. As a kid, there was plenty of sweets and stuff like that, especially sour ones that offered sweet and sour or different flavours, all in one sweet. So imagine if that was the case, we could go ahead and combine Frankenstein sweets. Some of these locations are great, we just need a little bit more room in them to do more things. Have another mixer, have a small boss fight that you can repeat. Don't make them just a one-time use and we never go back to them. The Ladybug's OP at the moment because of the water glitch where you can kill anything almost immediately by barging and then using your water cannon. And even without that, I still think it's pretty cool. There are so many arms in the game, I'm actually starting to worry there's way too many. They really do probably need to focus a bit more on new classes and then maybe retrofit some of the armors that we've already got to fit around a new class. But the look and design of most of them is really good. Some of them are always going to have some more buffs, maybe a bit of a retune on the rogue stuff, because it does seem to be just the go-to class, because the others are just still too weak. Bring back my bow buffs, you cowards. So yeah, I don't think Grounded 2 has been a flop with this update. I think they could have done better with PTB and the sheer amount of bugs and issues there were, which were probably the biggest I've seen. And only about half of them actually got resolved on day one of the update going live for everyone. But as always, as long as the game isn't crashing consistently, stopping you from playing, I can live with some of that stuff. Yes, it could be better to have certain content waiting or make sure the updates have got everything together. We desperately do need some replayable bosses or some mixers, something to do instead of just building while we're waiting for another update. But otherwise, as I always say, just go and play another bloody game. You're not meant to sit there playing this early access title day in, day out for the next 2 years. It's okay, you can have a little break. But there we go. A bit of a mixed video showing you what's going on with Grounded 2 and the money behind it and decisions that get made, and then hopefully my review. Agree, disagree me, I don't care. Let me know though in the comments, and I'll see you ratbags soon.